Hello and welcome back to AA Just for Today. Today's topic is going to be Step 3. Made a decision to turn our wills and lives over to the care and direction of God. Now, isn't that nice? Remember when you were a kid and you got in trouble or you felt sick or things weren't going right? You always had your dad or your mom to turn to. At least I hope you did. I always did, so I'm sorry if I'm being presumptuous here. But, it was always nice to have that, almost like that big cushion, that pillar of strength that you could turn to. Now, God is that if you allow him to be in your life like that. You say, I am, things aren't going well and, my way isn't working. My will, God gave me free will, which is the decision, the ability to make a decision between right and wrong or between this and that or a good thing and a better thing or a bad thing and a worse thing. We all have that ability inside of us. Now, our wills have got us where? To AA or on a bar stool or worse, jail, insane asylum, detox, wherever it lands you, that's not a good place to be. And I think you'd agree with me there. So what we need to do is we need to change our environment. We have to stop doing the things that put us in harm's way, like going to the bar. As we say in AA, you can't go to the bar and drink O'Doul's. You can't do it. You can't go there and drink ginger ale. You can't go there and think, well, I'm just not going to drink. I'm going to hang around with my old friends, and we're just going to have the same old good time that we used to have. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You'll stay there, and eventually, as they say in AA, that if you hang around a barbershop, sooner or later you're going to get your hair cut. And that's the same thing with booze. One night you'll be weak, or your girlfriend will break up with you, or your boyfriend, and it'll be so much easier, that much closer to your next drink. And that's the first one is the worst one, as they say. 100 is not enough, or one is too many. 100 is not enough. That's the way the saying goes. By the grace of God do we go. So that's another clue as to turning our will over to God, because from the day we were born, there was no guarantee that we would be here at the end of that day or even at the end of that week. So by the grace of God did we go. In a world where things fly around, things blow up, things crash into each other, there's things flying all over the place, and it's a wonder we do live to the end of that first day. But what we need to do when we're getting sober, or anybody, that even if there isn't a crisis in your life, God is always a great friend to have. God is always there. People say, well, I don't see God. How do I know he's there? Well, a friend of mine once said to me, well, you don't see the wind, but you know it's there. Well, I think that's the same principle with God. He is always there. Do me a favor. Close your eyes. Close your eyes and say to you and think, who do I got? I got myself and I've got God. Because we didn't get here by ourselves. We didn't create our own looks. We didn't give ourselves the genetic structure or the bones or the blood or the vessels that the blood flows through in our bodies, the brains in our heads. We have things within inside of us that are very frail and, can be very, very, as they say, can be very, very sensitive to some people depending on the things that you have experienced in your life. Now, I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't, I figured, that no one was going to help me and that I should just do everything on my own because there is no support system in this world. It's just me and my problems. And that's where you get into trouble, because then you get out on these islands of yourself and you're floating around out there and you realize that what you're floating in is booze. And then it distorts your mind and it makes you think that you're all alone and that nobody has the pain that I have. Well, you know what? It's a lie. Life is unfair to everyone. Sorry to say that, but it is. Even people that you think have got the life, you may not want their problems because it's all on the outside. It's nothing that's real. Material things, they're nice to have. But, these people that you might be envying, saying, oh, they have such a perfect life, they could be in debt up to their eyeballs and beyond and never get out of it and end up in bankruptcy. And all for what? Because they had a big inflated ego and they had to show the world how pissa they were. Sorry for popping my pea there, but they just think that they're wonderful. And, we all have problems. And we're all not so wonderful sometimes. And alcohol really, really complicates that. So what we need to do is we need to turn our wills over to God and put our lives in the care and direction of a loving God. Because I can tell you from experience, I was about probably, 3 months sober. And it was 90 days is big. One day is big, but 90 days is big. You kind of feel like, I got a little meat on my sobriety bones, as they say. But I still had those lousy feelings. Sometimes I still have stinking thinking, but it's those things, I lost my place here. Well, we'll just have to edit this out. That I forgot what I was saying. It'll come back to me. Oh, that somebody had said to me that it's amazing that you haven't done it yet. And I said, what haven't I done? He said, you haven't got on your knees and asked God to take away the desire for you to want to drink. And I said, why would I do that? And he said, well, because God is the only one that can do that. So I said, okay. And I always knew that, I always felt that God was there. I mean, I was brought up a certain way, but even, though I didn't agree with everything that was being taught to me, I knew that there was something greater than myself. So I got on my knees that night and I said, God, the big if you're really there, please take away the desire for me to drink. And I went to sleep that night, and as God is my judge, and as sure as I'm sitting here talking to you right now, the desire was gone. And sometimes in an extreme crisis, a little voice in the back of my head says, drink, Dan. Go drink. That's the solution. But those thoughts get kicked out because it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve anything because I have too many memories of the bad things. People say, well, don't remember the bad things. Well, the bad things can help you to stay focused and to stay balanced. Stay balanced. Remember those things. Remember your drunk log when if you get up and have the opportunity to get up and tell your story in front of other people or on this program. If you're ever interested in doing so, we would love to have you on, by the way. So if you ever have the opportunity to talk about those things in your life that brought you where you were, the things that scared you in the door, the things that are still out there, the things that we can face day to day sober, because that's the only way to work through your problems is to work through them, not work around them, not numb yourself, not do anything, but to experience that pain. When things are painful, that's oftentimes when we go running for that drink. And it's not a bad thing to feel that pain because it really makes you stronger. It really, really does. And turning your life over to God just says, you know what? I give up. I surrender. I can't do this anymore. I can't fight this beast, alcohol, anymore. I can't do this on my own because if I could, I wouldn't be listening to this program right now. So I need the town tough guy, the guy who knows how to defeat all the problems in this world, and that is God himself. So we're back here saying, hey, I got it all going on. I know what I'm doing. I don't need God. I could do this all by myself. Well, I did 8 months of sobriety, 8 months without a drink, without AA and without God. And you know what? One time I got into a big fight with somebody I was going out with, and I said, that's it. This is for the birds. And I went up the street, and I walked into a bar, and I ordered a beer, and I sat there, and I looked at it for about 25 minutes, and I could smell it. I could smell it when I came in the door. That's how sensitive I am to alcohol. And I sat there, and I said, after 25 minutes, I said, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but bleep it. And I drank it. And I said, well, that wasn't so bad. And, and so I said, well, why don't I go next door and get a 12-pack, and then I'll go home. So I had been off for 8 months, so you can imagine I got pretty loaded pretty quickly. So I had about 4 or 5 beers, and I said, see, I'm not an alcoholic. Within 3 weeks, I was back right where I had left off 8 months earlier, right back to drinking almost a case of beer a night by myself. Again, I got drunk all weekend. That's what I did. I drank from the time I got out of work on Friday until I went to sleep on Sunday. Every waking hour, I had a beer in my hand. And, that's no way to live anybody's life. I'd be so sick until the following Thursday. But, oh, boy, your body jumps back. Friday afternoon, you're going, okay, time to light this candle again. And, I finally said, I can't do this anymore. I can't. If I am going to be any kind of help to anybody, I don't want to die. I'm only 27 years old. I don't want to die. I don't want my life to be this nightmare anymore. I can't do the nightmare anymore. I can't roll the dice and hope it works out because I have the God-given right to do this to myself, to drink myself into a complete and utter stupor. And, I don't know if you do that. I'm just telling you, that's what I did. I drank all by myself, was up at 3 o'clock in the morning, watching reruns of the Brady Bunch going, why isn't my life like this? Well, you know what? No one's life is like that. Mike Brady's life wasn't like that. So you have to decide for yourself whether you're an alcoholic and whether you need the help. Everybody needs help with everything. And I'm not going to say that we don't, because we do. We need help. We need to reach out, and we need someone who is more powerful than anything in this universe, and that is God himself. So I hope that you are able to it's important we put our egos aside, and it's important that we be honest with ourselves. And I'm telling you from experience, 16 years now, a day at a time, that God is real and that God will help you, and he will restore you to sanity if you let him. Turn your will and your life over to the care and direction of God, and I guarantee you, things will get better. It won't be all roses and sunshine. I'm not going to tell you that. You're going to feel some pain, but you can handle it. You can get through it. With God on your side, you can get through anything, because they say, God himself says that where God is, everything is possible. He can restore you to sanity if you let him. We'll talk to you next time.